We're now going to move forward and hear from Amir Rashad. And Amir is a former physical commodity trader and supply chain manager. Today, Amir leads digitization, transparency, and traceability efforts of global commodity supply chains as the CEO and founder of the Timber Exchange, which is a modern partner for sawmills with high-volume cargo flows, replacing traditional middlemen by giving producers and industrial buyers market data, export process automation, and trade finance. The company has industrial customers across 15 countries, and we're going to hear from Amir today on the latest trends in global trade flows of industrial roundwood and sawn softwood. He is going to try his best to limit his presentation that he had much more detail on to about 10, 12 minutes, and then hopefully we'll have time for a bit of questions. So thank you, Amir.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Am I audible? Yes. Wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning. Very nice to see you all. Thank you so much for coming today. I'm here today to speak about the latest shifts and trends in the global log and sawn timber trade. My name is Amir Rashad. I'm the CEO and founder of Timber Exchange, a company based out of Stockholm, Sweden. Where do I point this? To get it to work. Okay, thank you very much. So, today we're going to be looking at who are the top exporters, who are the top importers, how are the flows shifting, the reasons behind the shifts, and also putting the shift in a historical context, but also what can we expect going forward. And a very small disclaimer, this is a very, very big topic. It's quite complex, and our analysis is based on public and private data that sometimes has pretty severe contradictions. And we've done our best to merge quantitative data and qualitative insights to tell you all the story of the market. And I'd like to give a special thanks to these very generous companies that have helped us out. So, a little bit about myself. What does an Arabic guy in Sweden know about forestry, you might wonder? Well, I'm born and raised in the industry, and my family's been in it for 50 years, and I have myself been a supply chain manager for over a decade, exporting every month hundreds of containers. So what does Timber Exchange do? Well, we are the premier tracker of the global forestry market, production levels, inventory levels, and so on. It is the most comprehensive resource, but our flagship product is supply chain automation, helping to ensure that supply chains are safe, compliant, and risk-free. And I also run a weekly webinar series interviewing market leaders from around the world on what is happening in their key markets. So, let's discuss the log market. First, looking at the long-term trend. The top exporters of logs are New Zealand, Netherlands, Czechia, and Germany, and combined, they make up 62% of all exports. And the top 10 players make up 92%. On the importing side, we have countries like China, Austria, India, and Germany, and combined, they make up 56% of all log imports, and the top 10 players are responsible for 77% of all imports. So, what's happening over the past decade? Well, Germany and Czechia, which we can see in green and red, in 2018, we see a sharp increase, and this is due to the bark beetle epidemic and consequential log exports to China. And we see also Netherlands coming up in 2020, exporting quite significant volumes, but the honorable member from the Netherlands, which I met yesterday, he said that this might be a data error. It might be transit volume, actually, which is what I thought as well. So, looking at the log imports, according to market leaders, they believe that China's log imports may have peaked for multiple reasons. Firstly, the Russian Federation banned log exports. Secondly, China has a forestation policy, and currently, they're planting 2 million acres every year until 2050. But also, the government push for housing started in 2016, but that bubble burst, unfortunately, in 2019. And it has been bursting quite slowly, and earlier this year we had the Evergrande financial crisis. So, how is it looking on the importing side? Well, between 2017 and 2020, Austria, which we see in orange, and Germany, which we see in red, they imported quite cheap logs from their neighboring countries. And as a result, this reduced harvesting in their local market, in their domestic markets, actually. And in green at the bottom, we see India suddenly spiking in 2020, right? And this is because they simply couldn't get sawn timber, which they required, so they shifted to logs, which they cut themselves domestically in India. And also Korea, which we see in black, looking on the far left side in 2013, they used to produce quite a lot domestically in Korea, but with imported logs from countries like New Zealand and so on. But it wasn't very cost effective, there were some quality issues, so in the end, they started switching slowly to buying ready softwood sawn timber. And the UK has also been on the rise recently, since 2018-19, we can say. And this is due to higher pulp and energy needs, and COVID exacerbated this demand level. And looking at the top log flows, the biggest one is by far New Zealand to China. And this has been increasing due to a low log cost, relatively speaking, a high supply in New Zealand, and relatively cheap processing power, or cheap domestic processing in China. And as discussed previously, New Zealand to China has increased quite significantly as well, but we believe that this is German volumes passing through the Netherlands. So, looking at intra-EU trade, for example, Czechia to Austria, Germany, Sweden to Sweden, Norway to Sweden, intra-EU trade has been falling overall because of less bark beetles, and as a result, European log exports are less as well. So, in summary, comparing the last normal year, 2019, to the latest full year, 2022, China's demand is significantly less due to lower demand, higher stocks, and a policy shift. And Sweden reduced imports as well quite significantly, 40%, and this was due to Russian pulpwood, actually. Looking at the short-term trend, New Zealand's exports to China are falling due to lower demand and the afforestation policy, and Czech and German demand are falling as well for the previously stated reasons. And UK demand has fallen also due to lower demand, unfortunately this year, and to higher economic uncertainty. And now, my favorite topic, sawn timber. Looking at the long-term trend. So, the top 4 markets, Canada, Russian Federation, Sweden, and Germany, they're responsible for 59% of all sawn timber exports. And the top 10 markets are responsible for 83% of all sawn timber exports. And on the importing side, we have markets like the US, China, UK, and France. And together, they make up 46% of all timber imports. And the top 10 markets, 62%. So, how are they performing? Canada, which we see in blue, their exports have been falling due to lower production, low market prices, and also a higher production cost. And the Russian Federation's exports have been falling due to the war, lower harvesting, and various supply chain limitations. And looking also at the importing countries, the US increased exports significantly during the period due to a strong entry from Europe during a time of declining Canadian supply, actually. And Chinese volumes peaked around 2019 due to extraordinary construction, which we discussed earlier, and extraordinary economic activity, which is now at lower levels and recovering. So what are the biggest softwood sawn timber trade flows? Well, Canadian volumes to the US are stable, but they have declined on the long-term basis. They have fallen by as much as 16 million cubic meters since 2005, and the Russian Federation's exports to China are increasing since 2019 thanks to closer economic and logistical integration compared with other key markets for the Russian Federation, such as Egypt, which are relatively complex. And what are some of the biggest trade flows for softwood sawn timber? Well, Germany, which we see in red, and Sweden, which we see in black, their exports to the US have exploded due to a very strong US market, long log costs, low-cost beetle logs in Germany, and a very weak Swedish krona. And in green, we see Uzbekistan, which has been a very big buyer from the Russian Federation due to strong economic growth and low competition. And summarizing this, Germany increased exports due to higher production and higher export dependence, and Brazil's exports actually fell significantly due to overproduction and lower demand abroad. And the UK increased their demand due to a surge in home improvement and repairs. Mexico became a very big buyer of Brazilian wood for value adding and pallets, and Egypt is decreasing due to economic challenges and significant overconstruction over the past years. And looking at the short-term trade, Canada to US is stable, but Russia has decreased a little bit, whilst the opposite is true for Russia to China. Germany has started pulling out of the US market, which we can see in green. Sweden and Finland, right before the summer, started cleaning out stock and sending that to Egypt. The US shipments are falling, or EU shipments to the US are falling due to oversupply and lower housing starts. And overall, the Russian Federation is constrained by sanctions. A weak Swedish krona has supported Swedish exports. Germany is curtailing due to weak foreign and domestic demand. And Chile has much lower demand due to lower exports due to lower demand in Asia and competition from Brazil. And Latvia has lost significant supply from Belarus and led to curtailments. What else is important? Maybe let's look at, so in conclusion, we are exiting a very, very volatile time where we have seen extremes on both sides, a very good market and a very bad market. And I believe we'll see more volatility going forward. And the total log market size will decline, but will be balanced from competition from pulp and energy. And this will drive prices higher for both logs and sawn timber, meaning that there is a coming lack of raw material in Central Europe and BC. And this will lead to higher competition from other sources. For example, there will be a shift of established trade lanes. The Russian Federation will enter the wider MENA market. South America might enter the EU and North Africa, which they're not active in. And the Nordics might supply more to the US and Central Europe, and China might rely less on Europe. And a final word here. I really believe that there is very strong underlying demand for housing globally, which is supported by a very young demographic in certain regions of the world. So we will still need to use a significant amount of sawn timber. So we will all have our jobs for a very long period.
Thank you very much, Mr. Rashad. An excellent presentation and some consistency coming out in the conclusions as well that we're hearing. And there is that demand from that younger generation for housing. We just have to make sure they can afford it. It's a big struggle in many places around the world. Okay, so we're going to turn now to wood-based panels.